It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game that took place on the 17th of March in the year 2022. The game was 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, played in the Gooey Cube. As we are continuing on the Red Star Rising campaign, the Red Star has now risen. We are in the Foulest of Spirits Part 2. All characters were in attendance, and we had a bonus character. We were once again joined by our friend Jake, who was able to make it up for a night. Hopefully we're going to continue on with something soon. We're working on it, but he was able to join us in a role that he wanted from the very beginning when he heard of these characters. He wanted to play as the spell dancer Kenna. And finally got to. It was great. So, to set up the situation, the group was prepared to attack the thieves that had stolen from Mother Selvence's wagon certain trinkets and relics that are precious to the troop for the Blue Veil, core to their identity as Hanatas. This was not something that could go without redress. Also, fairly unlikely that, getting the law on their side. Let's face it, the Hanatas have few friends in the law. So, they had trailed the scoundrels to the Mangy Hound Tavern, a roadside tavern outside of Nevermore. And they'd found one of the trinket earrings that she had had. Only she wore these. So the group surrounded the tavern. They wanted to make sure that nobody could get out of this. Unless maybe they surrendered. Who knows? But the group is ready. And their plan changed a little bit with Kenna arriving. Most of the group was scattered around, making sure they had windows covered. They had the kitchen door covered, which also put them near the cellar. They were going to have Glynn stay near the front, but they were going to have a distraction posed with Crendon and Kenna going in through the front. Now, Kenna came in with kind of a sweetheart package because she hadn't been a part of the group. So she trailed them and surprised them and like, hey guys, thought you might need some help. I gave several items to Kenna to kind of make up for the fact she wasn't there for the first part of it. A couple of potions. Nice to have. I decided she should have a weapon, and when he told me that he wanted her to follow the dervish aspect of the spell dancer, I looked at the Serric Iron weapons that were in this wonderful, wonderful little packet of cards that I got from Gooey Cube as a reward for sponsoring their Kickstarter. It's really nice to just have some stuff that I can use for when I need to pull out a magical item on the fly. Party has already been gifted with a couple of these items in celebrations of various birthday presents people have had. But I was looking at the weapons, and I know most of the people who were fighting had at least one Serric Iron weapon. They were given away quite readily in the first part of the adventure. So the first one I came to was a Serric Iron greatsword, and then I found Serric Iron fighting knives. The player chose the greatsword. So she's this little slip of a girl. Well, she's got a strength of 12. She's not puny, but she's carrying around this whomping big greatsword. That's her style. I like to think that her defensive abilities involve planting it into the ground, holding it by the handle, and then just moving on either side of it to let the blade block any incoming blows. The enemies would find her choice of weaponry far less amusing very quickly. They got to hear the situation that was going on inside. The tavern owner and his wife, or maybe she was the owner and he was her husband. Who knows who actually owns it? They probably both do. But they were both kneeling in front of the windows, and Worston was there with a naked sword. And the rest of his bully boys were around. And we know how strong Big Ned is, and we know what a dagger thrower Jend is. And he was playing up, threatening them, telling them that, it's a pity that you aren't playing games with us and not using our liquor that we're selling to you. And the bartender, Bartram, he was defiant. He told him, I wouldn't sell anybody that pig spit. No matter what you do, you couldn't make me sell that. I wouldn't defend my customers like that. This did not make Worston happy. And he probably would have drawn his sword and killed the old man. Doesn't look terribly old, but yeah, he's older. When, going through the door, bold as brass, was Crendon and Kenna. Now, Kenna, they had seen because she's a spell dancer. They would have seen her. She's supposed to be seen by and make money for the troupe. That's a part of the draw. But she was attending to other things throughout the camp, as she was of the generation of getting ready to take that next step. Almost certainly would be a performer too, but until she was ready to be on stage with the other spell dancers, she was working with the other adventuring level characters, being around in case they needed her. So they weren't as familiar with her, but they knew Crendon. Crendon had beaten Jend in dagger throwing, and there was a score to settle there. Worston, of course, had lost in a shooting contest to Glynn, and Big Ned had beaten Ventov in a bare-knuckles fight. So they were familiar. And there was surprise. Certainly Worston was not expecting Crendon to come in, certainly not with someone else. And he immediately sent his 3 thugs, not Jend, not Big Ned, but the other 3, to go over and deal with Crendon. Well, what ended up happening after that was 2 people were in the back end as soon as this fight started, and that was Vanessa, the druid, and Haran, the fighter. Haran was supposed to break open the door so they could come in through the kitchen. Be a nice flank distraction, also stop them from getting out that way. They couldn't break down the door. It's a tough door. So they weren't able to get through, and yes, it was locked, because, you keep your back door locked when you're not going in and out. So they couldn't get in. They just made a bunch of noise, but nobody was paying attention because the fighting was going on the inside. Well, the group was going to advance, but Ventov sprang in, and he took point, so he put himself in front of the 3 brigands and got ready to fight. He had his new buckler ready to go, and he had his axe, and he was all ready to start brawling. And for the most part, the group converged, and they found out something kind of nasty. All of these guys from the Shiners are trained to work with each other and use pack tactics. They get advantage if there's another Shiner agent near them. So, they became very, very dangerous very quickly. To the point where Ventov is starting to get a little worried. Even though he has good armor, there's a lot of shots coming in on him. So, Kenna moves up to attack with her greatsword, wallops a guy. Getting good dice rolls. It's a good start. Brandel is on the far side looking in through a window and just keeping an eye on things at the moment. So sees that Haran hasn't caved in on one side and started flanking, so she's kind of getting nervous. But mostly the bad guys get to go first. So Worston has ordered his thugs to do their worst. And now that Crendon is in, well, Jend owes him, so he took a couple of daggers and threw them both at Crendon. 2 2s. It was awful. Awful, I tell you. Awful. And so that didn't work out so well. And Big Ned moved up, and he grabbed the bartender, or no, he grabbed the wife by her neck and was holding her up as kind of cover. Well, one of the items that I gave out, which I admit might be a little too powerful for first level characters, but we'll see how it goes, was a Wand of Confusion for Crendon. So Crendon immediately used it. On the thugs, all 3 thugs made their saving throw. Not joking, showed them. 15, 16, 15, all made it. The next round he used it against Worston and Ned, and they both failed. So Ned is standing there just blank. He, every time, rolled do nothing, so he was effectively out of this whole fight. Worston would eventually get out, but yeah, the losing a round really threw them off. And it was up to Jen to try to jog Crendon to try to break the spell. Well, Glynn slid in like a panther and pounced up on a side table with the grace of an acrobat and started shooting. He started shooting at Ned because he was threatening this woman. The big brouhaha between Ventov and the thugs, well, it did help that I'll get the name eventually. Kenna was there. She did draw one of them off of Ventov, but he got battered pretty hard to the point where he was honestly worried. He had to use his second wind, calling for help. Brandel was looking through the window. She's like, I can help. I can cast Magic Missile. I can see the target, so I can cast it through the window. Yes, I gave her an Arcana test, and yes, she rolled a 1 for it. Psh, blew out the window with the force of her magic missiles, but didn't hurt anybody. And revealed that she was there. Now, at the same time, Crendon gets nailed with a couple of daggers, and he's in bad shape. So, after throwing out a vicious mockery, he retreats, gets behind cover by getting outside onto the porch. And things are, for the most part, a little dicey, but with Big Ned out of the fight, it was a lot easier. The thugs took a lot of beating to take down, but once Ventov starts rolling, and he was following up with blows from his attacking buckler, he was able to do a fair amount of damage and drop one of the thugs. Shots from Brandel's Wand of Dying Embers into the backs of the other thugs dropped another one and injured the third. And then Kenna just took off and maximum damage and just splattered one. So nobody's questioning whether she should be carrying this greatsword. It seems to be made for her. It'd be scary if she ever got... She used a feat and got great weapon fighting and decided she really wanted to own into that. Ooh. So, at this point, it was just the last. Crendon decides he's going to help Glynn, who is being attacked by Worston. Worston eventually throws off the confusion, but before he gets a chance to do that, he is compelled to attack the nearest creature to him, and he actually takes his sword and he attacks the inn wife. That made things pretty much the point of no return. There wasn't going to be any mercy for these guys. So Glynn was trying to shoot, but now Worston is in hand-to-hand with him, slicing at his legs with his longsword while bow. So Glynn drops the bow, pulls out his short sword, which it's a Circ Iron short sword. It's not bad. He stabbing down. Crendon decides he's going to help out by shattering the window and providing a distraction so that Glynn has a better chance at hitting at Worston. Jen had been holding his daggers waiting for Crendon to show up because he knew he'd pop up at least one more time. And he thought, I think he saw that he had a crossbow. He was expecting him to throw the crossbow, but since he made himself visible, he just took his action and threw his daggers into Crendon. One of them hit. It was enough to drop Crendon. So, down on the porch. Well, what happened in between there? You also had at one point Vanessa just got tired of waiting for Haran to break open the door, so she ran out around the side and she threw out an entangle to entangle Big Ned, the inn wife, and Worston, which Worston made a saving throw and got out of. Big Ned was confused and envined, so he wasn't in a great place, but he was so confused by that he couldn't do anything. So eventually, they're all still worried about Ned. I mean, he's strong enough, he could have just gone and probably killed her. So they fired into Ned and finally dropped him. Nobody went into the... got into the entangle. But, yeah, that was kind of touch and go. So Worston is still dancing around, and now Crendon is down. Worston knows this is a fight to the death. All the exits are covered. There's lots of enemies here. He tries to take down Glyn. Cannot get a purchase on him. Glyn just toughs out the injuries that he takes in the fight and is left standing after his final blow. The final blow takes out Worston. And Jend realizes the game is up. He tries to run away. He's not a brave man. That's why he throws knives. So he tries running at the window, and I decided a nice acrobatic roll out the window, give him a running start. He's got a decent chance of running away, even though Brandel will be getting some spell shots on him. Maybe he gets away. I rolled a natural 1 for him to try, and he hit the wall, and boonk. And then Ventov just came over and finished him off. So at this point, the only other thing of note was, you might be asking yourself, did Harana never get through that side door? Yes, he did. Unfortunately for him, there was one last shiner. He was in the kitchen. He really didn't look like he wanted to go in after the rest of them. So he was looking to see what a good opportunity would be to stab somebody. And he heard them banging on the door, so he took the wood chopping axe that was by the door, and he was just ready to tee off if they forced the door. As soon as they did, his reaction took off and nailed Haranan right in the head. Well, Haranan weathered the blow. He's got a hard head, but he got clipped by the side of the axe, just punk. Then started a weird fight, because Haranan wanted to help everybody else, so he barrel rushed right by this guy. Didn't hit him, just ran right by and pushed him over. Got to the door, opens it up, ha-ha! And then the guy he ran by took his sword and went, stabbed him in the back. So, as the fight degenerated, the other Shiner thugs had dropped. Jend was finished off. This last Shiner decided, I'm just going to run. Haranan turned around as he was running. He took his attack of opportunity, hit him in the middle of the back. That got him down to 1 hit point. That's a recurring theme. And he ran out into the darkness and got away. So there was 1 survivor in very bad shape. So the group gathered stock. Everybody was dead. They comforted the wife, gave her a healing potion. She was much better. Even though they are Hanatas, and these people clearly are not comfortable with blood-touched people, it can be pretty politically difficult to harbor blood-touched people, considering there's an entire empire who looks to kill them all. And even the common folk are very superstitious about the blood touch. So even if you're sympathetic towards people, it's hard to associate with people with the blood touch. And several members of the group have the blood touch fairly obviously. For example, Kenna is a Fey-touched human. So she's got long ears, white eyes. She, looks exotic. Brandel is... well, she's gold dragon touch, so she's got little golden scales on her skin. It's hard to miss some of them. Some of the group they don't have the blood touch. Glyn does not have blood touch. Crendon does not have blood touch, and Ventov does not have blood touch. But the others, well, and it's hard to tell if Vanessa has a blood touch. Supposedly she might, but it's hard to tell. But Brandel, Vanessa... Yeah, it's weird. The 3 women in the group all have blood touch. I can't remember if Haranen has a blood touch or not. Oh, well. At any rate, they won. And the innkeeper's like, hey, I can feed you. You can rest here, do whatever you need. And things were going pretty decently when the door got booted open. And the captain of the guard, Ralph, came in. And he's immediately, you better have a good explanation why all these people are dead here, or I'm going to take you to jail and you will stay there for the rest of your lives. Well, with the bartenders, or the innkeeper's corroboration, they profess their innocence, and Ralph is forced to accept that they are innocent. They were protecting these poor people and stopping brigandry, which is pretty noble. And, for all that Ralph is not a friend of the Hanataz by a long stretch, he does seem to try to do the right thing here, and he, gives them a small reward. And then comes the conversation about where they came from and what all is going on. Because, the group looted the bodies and everything, and they found a map leading to someplace fun. But the group all, what is going on here? And Bertrand was able to say, well, these people have been pestering us a lot. Protection money, demanding that we buy their horrible moonshine, and a variety of other things. That's just been going on. They are trying to take over this area by putting everybody else in fear for their lives. And this has been going on for a while. So, the group is like, we gotta put an end to this. They looked over the bodies and they did not find Mother Sylvance's things. So they asked Bertrand, what, didn't they have a bundle of things? Because they stole from us. Bertrand said, yeah. They gave it to that one little weaselly brother of theirs, gave him a bundle, and he took off down the road away from town. So they're like, aha, now we know where our stuff has gone to. When they were talking to Rolf was like, yeah, that Worston, I wanted to arrest him. He's a thug, he's a bully, and I know he's in cahoots with these Shiners. So they know that he knows who that the Shiners exist. And they're like, well, where are they based out of? Like, I don't know. But, they travel around, and anytime I've caught anybody suspected of being with them, they get out of jail very quickly by order of somebody higher than me. So they've got somebody in their pocket, or something over somebody that's forcing their hand. I can't directly move against them. A little insight into the conversation, and Crendon especially, who is very sensitive to social situations, noticed that Ralph seems afraid of the Shiners for some reason. And he pressed him on it. I mean, there's no subtlety. He just straight on said, hey, you're scared of them. What's going on? And Ralph relayed the story about how there's a family up in the hills called the Butchers. And they're suspected to be in league with these Shiners, if not actually, directing them. And he sent 4 of his best men up to the farm that they have. They have a pig farm. And they never came back. And the problem with people who have a pig farm, who have crimes of making people disappear, you'll probably never find the bodies. So, don't eat the pork, folks. You never know. At least here at Nevermore. So, he's like, I'm giving you 50 gold for saving these 2 and doing a good act. I can reward you again if you go up there and investigate. Find out what happened to my men. And if you put an end to all of this, you will earn some gratitude. And the group is like, well, gosh, we've been going since the day. We went through the worst stretch of forest in the world. The forest walk through hell. We've used up all of our spells. We are in a horrible position right now. We want to go after them, but we're beat up. We've used up most of our abilities. We need to take a long rest. We have to go in the morning. And Rolf said, well, you could do that, but I'll tell you this. They deliver moonshine all over the place. They're clearly used to transporting at night. If you delay, you might never find that stuff you went to look for, because they might disperse it all over the countryside. And the group's like, oh. Well, it looks like we'll take a short rest, because we at least need a short rest. And I said, okay. Bertrand and his wife, Fern, were so grateful that they saved them, that they gave them food, they gave them everything they needed. So I gave them a free hit die of healing through their... So they could still roll another hit die if they were still down after that, and use up their hit die they already had. But they were given bonus healing. Then Crendon looked at his stuff and he's like, hey, from Strangely Gooey Holiday, I have this flask of essential water. It says that if I drink it, it's effectively like I get a long rest. I'm like, yeah? Glad he remembered that. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to take a drink from it, because I have no magic. I am down to cantrips. So he drank it, and instantly, he felt completely refreshed. And I'm like, yeah, you drank about a third of the bottle. Because there's two other casters in the group. There's Brandel, and there's, of course, Vanessa. Kenna used her magic missile in the fight, but she has an apprentice's ring, so she's still in good shape. So the group now has been restored to the point where they feel that they can go out and continue. So they went forth and went on down the road, further away from town. And Rolf tied up his loose ends. The bartender and his wife were very grateful. And the group left, no problem, in much better spirits than they were before, set for vengeance. And they went along following the map, and they came to the first marker, which is a great big tree with a path leading away from it. Now this path is not a hard one to follow. Looking at it, at the lovely picture that was provided as part of the adventure, you can see without too great of a difficulty that the road goes along here, and there's this path that goes off into the forest, heading northward. And there's this big gnarled tree right here. So, that was their marker. And they also saw, after a little investigation of the tree, that it had a stash of some supplies, including some more of this god-awful moonshine of these shiners, which is just pure poison. And it was also marked with their symbol. So, the group knows they're in the right direction. So they started heading down when they hear something. A wagon coming along the road. What's going on? So they stop to see who's going, and they see an amazing sight. They see a wagon, but it's being swarmed by these colored lights. These colored lights appear to be floating in the sky, a little bit like Will-o'-the-Wisp, but much less subtle. And each one seems to have an object in the center of the lights. Now, a little bit of thinking, and somebody realized that a long time ago there was a crooked tower that was controlled by a mage of some power. And he kind of controlled a certain area and had apprentices and everything. And he used to have couriers that he would dispatch of pure magic, who would go and fetch things for him and bring them back. And these things looked like they had random odds and ends. So this was a magical phenomenon tied into the area. The horse drawing the cart looked scared. It looked like it was a potato cart. And the driver had his cloak over his head, trying not to look at these floating objects that were flying and buzzing all around the cart. So the group decides they're going to go out. First of all, Crendon decides he's going to be stealthy, and he's going to sneak over behind the cart, and he's going to get up onto the back of the cart. Rolls a 1. He gets to the back of the cart, reaches up, pulls the latch, falls back into the road, and about a third of the cart's worth of potatoes fall down onto his gut, pinning him. Oh, so much fun. Crendon, never stop. It's great. So the old man knows something's going on because that made a bit of a racket. So he draws back his hood. Glenn comes running out and says, "Don't shoot!" Glenn has a longbow. He has swords on him. He has a scimitar on one side, a long sword on the other. He's wearing leather armor. He is your essential brigand of an elf. Guy takes his crossbow, takes a shot. I roll a 1. He flies off into nowhere. The arrow actually goes, the quarrel goes straight up. Glenn's like, "Ah!" Eventually, the group talks him down. And he's distressed by these things flying around. Glenn is curious about what these things are, so he kind of reaches out his hand to try to communicate with one of these glowing objects. And it whisks down, and it drops off a cookie jar in his hand and just blinks out of existence when he grabs it. He's like, wow, cookie jar is weird. And then it suddenly blinks into life around his Serric Iron short sword and flies away with it, which does not make him happy. And he's like, just looking at the cookie jar, looking at it. And the rest of the group is all, they come up. The other wisps really aren't doing anything with them. And as a matter of fact, as the cart stops, the wisps continue on because they really weren't all that interested in the cart. It only had potatoes in it. Matter of fact, one of those little things was carrying a potato. And they reassure the driver, who was about to reach for a club, that they meant him no harm. That they just saw the lights. They were seeing if he needed any help. They offered to help him get the potatoes back up. And they did. And he, in a nice Irish accent, thanked them for their help. And as they noticed, he had shrunk down to 2 feet tall, wearing a green pair of trousers and a green vest, white shirt, and he had now a beard and red hair, and they're like, oh, it's a leprechaun, of course. It's St. Patrick's Day. So the leprechaun thanked them heartily for their help, loading up his potatoes, and in exchange, they all got a Gooey reward, by the way, or 2 of them got Gooey rewards, the person who rolled high and low on a roll. So some Gooey rewards were handed out. But for this, they were all given a sip of his leprechaun whiskey in a little silver flask, which every one of them got a point of inspiration for doing that. So that's banked. And he also ended up giving them a golden potato. Now, this potato is heavy. It feels like it is solid gold, and it is very valuable. But if they eat the potato, they can snack on it and devour it and get 2 hit dice worth of healing in one action. So it's kind of, you have to be conscious. You wouldn't be able to do this to a person who's unconscious, but it can be used to give yourself back 2 hit dice worth of healing. That's a pretty nice thing. And appropriate for the St. Patrick's Day celebration for first level characters. So that ended the night. It was a fun St. Patrick's Day night. We had celebrated by having corned beef and cabbage and potatoes. It was great. I made Irish soda bread. It turned out very good. I was very proud. We had cookies and mint brownies, and it was Guinness for those of us of age to drink Guinness. It was a night of revelry and fun. Maybe we didn't get quite so far as we might otherwise have, but it was a lot of fun. It was really nice to have Kenna's player Jake with us, and we're going to see if we can't do that remotely, as he's quite a ways away at school, but we'd still love to be with us, and he's available, so we're going to see what we can do about that. I have to get a computer for that, but we'll see. And yeah, I'm really happy the way that this is going, and this has been spooky fun. But we've got a lot more left to do with Fellowship of Spirits. So if any of you have ever run the Fellowship of Spirits, this is going to get interesting. Until next time, though, I am Rob. If you enjoyed this, stay tuned. And every 2 weeks we do this, and lots of video to watch at. So until next time, my friends, thank you and farewell.